This podcast deals with themes, languages, and situations that may not be suitable for young audiences. If you're under the age of 18, parental guidance isn't going to help you here. Welcome to Now Open the Podcast, the sex education podcast that's more sex than education. I'm Trisha.
My name is Kai.
My name is
I'm
Jobim.
And I'm fresh.
This week, we are talking about one of the most common struggles of highly sensitive people navigating conflict and relationships. Basically, we're talking about how emotional people get overwhelmed and anxious when they think their partner's mad at them. And basically, if you've ever spent time obsessing over how other people's actions or words have impacted you, this is the episode for you. This is part 1 of Too Soft for Love, where we'll talk about what it means to be a highly sensitive person, as well as the advantages and challenges of being really tuned into your emotions. If you are listening live and like what you hear, you can join the discussion by leaving a comment below. And if we have time, we will get to it as the show goes on. So let's get started, y'all. So first things first, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not really and 10 being super, rate how sensitive you think you are.
First off, I think that is a horrible question, and I'm offended you'd even ask. I don't think I'm sensitive at all. It depends, I think, what you're talking about, because I think I'm sensitive about some things, and I'm really, really dense when it comes to really numb, I'd say, to others.
Overall, though, do you feel like generally you're like an average person, or do you think you're more sensitive than most?
I actually think that on average, I am more dense than most people when it comes to relationships. Yeah, so I'm like I'm a 2 on a 1 to 10 scale of sensitivity. I am insensitive.
How about you, Kai?
I feel like I'm kind of like Jobim in the sense that it depends on the context and like who I'm talking to, like who I'm who I'm interacting with in the moment. Like personally for me, I'm very, very sensitive when it comes to like my family, right? But generally, I would say that I'm at like a 7 or 8. I guess I'm at a 7 or 8 in the sense that like whenever something good or bad happens to someone I love, I tend to over-identify with how they feel. So it's like I used to be written off as like insensitive, but then I looked into it. I really like tried to get curious about it and really like, what the fuck is happening here? I realized what happens is when something reminds me of something I've done in the past that I don't like, it gets me really like uncomfortable. So it's like an over-identification with like what the hell is happening with this person. Like if I see something that's reflected in who I was, I'm like, damn, I don't want to like, you know. But if something that like I genuinely love you and like I really like just want to see you win, I also feel that win really like, a lot. Parang ganon.
Okay. How about you, Fresh?
Wow. So a very hard question to answer, honestly, because I feel like I'm either hypersensitive or I'm not. Like I'm the densest person alive, or I'm like super sensitive and I overthink everything. I feel like I just cycle between those two. I don't know if it's like part of my whole bipolar whatever. I don't know. It's just my speculation. But there are times where I feel like I can not only just understand other people more because of my sensitivity and in turn understand myself as well, but there are other times where it's just like not. I'm just dense af and I end up like hurting myself and other people as well. So I don't know. Yeah.
What about you,
Okay.
Trisha?
What about you, Trisha?
On a scale of 1 to Trisha, how sensitive are you, Trisha?
Exactly, though.
That's a good scale.
Even
Very
you
good
know
scale.
how. I feel like I am probably the most sensitive, or at least consistently sensitive, because I think it's just a really core part of my personality to be a sensitive person.
I would say you're the most empathic, and that's why you're the most sensitive. You
We
just
will
have so much
see a little bit
empathy.
later
Yeah.
about how that works out, but yeah, I'm super sensitive. I grew up hearing that a lot. You know, you're so sensitive, toughen up, grow a thick skin. These were like mainstays of my childhood and like up until adulthood, where it's like I burst into tears very, very quickly. And I'm very emotional and I have a lot of feelings, and y'all know this. And I think if you listen to this podcast, you know it. So I wanted to do this episode because for a really long time, I was not happy about being sensitive because everyone had told me that I shouldn't be so sensitive. So I thought it was a weakness. But I wanted to explore this topic a little more. This is the Trisha episode, all about Trisha. Just kidding. So let's go into the characteristics of a highly sensitive person. So the idea or the concept of a highly sensitive person began in the late 90s. Uh, Psychologist Elaine Aron discovered the trait. She found that a whopping 15 to 20% of the population is highly sensitive. So that's like 1 in 5, like at most. And that's there's 4 of us on the podcast, and I guess one of us is that. So in relationships, she also found out that at least 34% of love relationships involve at least one highly sensitive person. Now, the term highly sensitive person is what Elaine Aron calls it. There's also another term for it. It may be called sensory processing sensitivity. So, the reason for this is because highly sensitive people, the reason why I guess we are sensitive is because we process external stimuli much more than others. So, and this is for better or for worse. So, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. And this means that feelings, sensations, all of that are much more intense. And this includes things like sexual attraction and love. And because of this, highly sensitive persons tend to be much more vulnerable to extreme moods, both positive and negative. Something happens and they're very
Hmm.
easy, quick to react and quick to doom spiral or they're very excitable,
This
basically.
is interesting. This is the first I've ever heard. I mean, genuinely, this is the first I've ever heard of sensitive being like a medical psychology term, right? Because you just grow up hearing, "Oh, you're so sensitive. Stop being so sensitive." Well, I didn't know you were so sensitive about that, but I didn't know that Elaine Aron discovered a trait and like called it sensory processing sensitivity.
Yeah, well,
So
if you
there's like
think
a
about
very
it,
yeah.
sensitivity is like basically just how much you can sense something, right? And in that, like when you look around you, and part of this is also external stimuli like large crowds. So that's a sensory experience, that's
Hmm.
a huge stimuli. And because you process things more than others,
Hmm.
then that same huge crowd, which might be fine for you, may be overwhelming for this one person because they're taking in much more information in their brain,
Okay.
right? Like sounds, sights, all those things. That is
So they're
part of
highly
like,
stimulated people.
yeah, they're easily stimulated.
Yeah, easily stimulated people. Okay.
Yes. We love those kinds of people on our show. Uh, HSPs are also sometimes sensation seekers. So even if they are, overly stimulated, it becomes kind of like addicting, I guess. So they want to seek out these intense sensations. So they become extremely curious. They love to explore, and they often have a rich and complex inner life full of ideas and feelings. But because there's a lot of things going on around them and they take in a lot of information, their energies kind of ebb and flow because, when you react to stimuli, it's exhausting. You get tired a little bit. So a lot of HSPs are introverts, although some, I guess, like me, are extroverts. But a lot of them do like to be on their own and withdraw sometimes when they're overly stimulated.
Mm-mm.
So Mackie says, say stimulated again, Trisha. Stimulated. Anything for you, Mackie. So, how can you tell if you are a highly sensitive person? So, I am going to send link in the comments, and I'm going to add this to the episode description. This is the original highly sensitive person test by Aaron herself.
Oh
So
wow.
if you're curious, you can check that website, answer the questions. So, but a quick run through, and I want
My
you all
personal
to
favorite is letter G. That's my favorite one. Do you have a rich? That's
What was
easily
that? Rich
answered.
sugar
Very
daddy.
easily
What was
answered.
I typing in there? I think it was supposed to be "Do you have a rich in her life?" But I didn't finish typing it out.
Do you have a rich
Anyway,
sugar daddy?
so I'm gonna go through like a few questions, and in the comments y'all can answer, and I would also love the hosts to answer as well. So, do people often tell you to stop being so sensitive or stop overthinking a lot?
Yep. Yeah. I had a partner. Oh my goodness. Share ko lang. I start I started crying and then he was like, "Whatever, you cry all the time anyway."
Oh my god.
Damn, son.
The value of your sadness is diminished just by how much of it there is. You know, it's like that
Yeah,
doesn't make any.
basically. How about you
There's a reason
guys?
he's
Do
right.
people tell you that you're too sensitive? No, you don't really hear that.
I
Probably not.
almost
Okay.
never. I hear the
Over-
opposite.
Do I? Parang, I've heard it like when I was younger. Gets ba? Like when I was younger, I heard it a lot. Then as I got older, I heard it less. So
When did it stop? Was it a conscious effort? Did you do something to be like, I'm gonna make people say I'm less sensitive, or you just?
not parang it. I don't know. I guess like I think what happened was I stopped telling my feelings to my family. Like I stopped like talking about my
Mm.
shit so that I didn't get it a
Mhm.
lot anymore.
Mhm.
But growing up, I'd get it a lot.
So you just
Okay.
kind of close yourself off instead of being told, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd rather not be called sensitive.
I'd rather not like talk about it. That's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah. Gets.
Ayun.
The facade of strength.
Right.
Ayun.
So, question number 2: do you think that other people should be more sensitive?
Again, the opposite. I often think people should be a lot less sensitive. Emotionally, not physically. You know, I love physically sensitive people. Those are fun. But yeah, that does not apply to me. What about you, Kai? Presh.
Parang for me kasi it's like the way I see it is I don't parang if someone can only give this much or can like act this sensitive, why should I expect them to do more pag di nga kaya?
Do you wish they would be more sensitive?
I
No.
don't
Would you
know.
like them to be more
No,
sensitive?
'cause, like,
No, rin. Kasi like that's because if I don't wish it anymore because like I understand that di mo nga kaya eh. So parang why would I wish for something na di mo nga kaya? Gets ba?
Mhm.
Parang
Okay.
ganun.
yeah, I don't know how to answer that because I think that people feel, whether they show it or not. And people are
Mm-mm.
affected by things whether they show it or not. So I think it's just about I wish people would um communicate what they're
Mhm.
feeling in a more in a better way, I suppose, rather than
Mhm.
being more sensitive because everybody feels
Yeah.
something.
You want people to be more mindful or more
Yes,
thoughtful,
yes,
which
more
are,
thoughtful.
I think,
Me
would be, we
included,
can relate.
honestly.
I think we need to maybe destigmatize the word sensitive here.
Mhm.
So, like, sensitive isn't just like, a lot of feelings, it's just more being mindful, thoughtful, and noticing things,
Right. As
right?
someone who is not sensitive, like admittedly not a sensitive person, when I am overwhelmed, the times that I have called people sensitive, whether fairly or unfairly so, it has been because I have been overwhelmed by their reaction to something. And, I don't communicate my feelings like that. I don't express my feelings like that. So that expression of emotion to me was, yeah, so I guess you're right. My way, the way I use sensitive is like you're being a bit much, right?
Mm. So for
I
you, there's
think
already
that's
a value judgment on the word
right,
sensitive.
right. I think, yeah, that's how I'd used sensitive in
Wait.
the past.
Before we move on, like with the show, can we like clarify, like have a baseline? What's our understanding of sensitive for the show?
Yeah,
Para
well, we're going
everyone's
to.
on the same page.
I think we're
So
going to use the medical definition, right? The one that was given by.
yeah,
Uh,
so
Elaine
basically
Aaron?
I mean the biological reaction that's happening is that highly sensitive people process external stimuli more than others. But
Yeah.
basically what we can call sensitive here, these are people who often are quick to react, quick to have
Mhm.
emotions, high or low. They're also people who tend to notice subtle things like changes in mood, behavior, tone, language. You know, like when somebody takes a tone with you and you're like, don't snap at me. And then they're like, I'm not snapping at you. You're being too sensitive. But because
Right.
they notice the slight changes in your inflection,
Right.
to them, it means something's different because now you're talking in a different way. So
To
that's
them,
what
the
I mean by
difference is night and
sensitive.
day. Yeah. Even though for somebody else that the change might not have been intentional, the change might have even been a restrained change. But because the person who is sensitive picked up on it, they'll ask about it. Like it's night and day to me. I'm not going to ignore it. I've seen a change in you.
Yes, it's basically something's different here. And it would be really
Yes.
weird not to point it out because something's
Yes.
happening.
I'm
Talk to
not trying
me.
to force a
Good point.
confrontation here, but there's clearly something off, right?
Yeah, so these are highly sensitive people are people who are very much attuned to these changes
Hmm.
and attuned
Hmm.
to things around them. So that's what I mean by like, do you think people should be more sensitive, more attuned to the things around them, and less
Right.
self-absorbed, more outward facing? So that's typically like me. I think this a lot. Like
Hmm.
whenever somebody yells at me and I'm trying to talk nicely and have a proper discussion or argument or whatever, and then they're like insulting or saying toxic things at me, number one thing in my head is like, I just wish people would be more sensitive. Why? Like, it's because I'm so sensitive, so everyone around me, obviously by comparison,
Is a
which is an
little
unfair
insensitive.
comparison. Honestly, it is an unfair comparison. Okay, question number 3: do you avoid violent movies or TV shows because they make you too uncomfortable? Not Jobim. Don't even answer this one.
Violent. I
Like
could do
violent,
violent.
gory. Yeah.
I could do violent, but I can't do humiliating.
Mm, I
So
kind of
like
understand that.
when I watch Joker, like and I watch it alone. So like
Hmm.
I remember I don't know why I had that idea where it was like I just got through a break. I'm gonna watch a movie alone. And I choose Joker. So I watched a Joker alone. And I remember this in the entire scene where he was doing the stand-up scene.
Right.
I could not take it. Like I felt like pulling my hair out. It's like I felt so I feel it so hard. Like I said earlier, I over-identify. So like, I feel it so hard. So I'm like,
Right.
and I feel like it's me. And I feel like it's happening to me. Parang ganon.
Hmm. That sounds like a heavy sense of empathy. What about you, Presh? Do you like violent movies or TV shows?
Okay lang. I don't have no qualms with it, honestly. Yeah.
Honestly, same. I mean, I still cover the screen because I'm jumpy. But
Sure. Sure. Yeah, me too.
other than that, it's fine. Like I'm okay with the concept of watching a violent movie. All right, next question. Do you avoid situations where you could possibly be overwhelmed?
I think this is a
Actively.
yes for all of us. Yes.
No, like, do you actively go out of your way? For example, you think that, oh, I'm somebody invited me out, but there might be a big crowd, so I'm not going to go out.
Yes. All the time.
Parang,
All the live long day.
but the questions are parang the way I've seen it kasi is like parang pre-pandemic I would have, but
Oh
I feel
yeah,
like you know what I mean? Pre-pandemic it was something that it was really like if something overwhelmed me, I wouldn't go. But like what I usually do is if I know I'm gonna be overwhelmed in the crowd, I still go. I just like stay in a corner.
Mhm.
yeah.
Gets
Right,
ba?
right.
So parang I don't avoid it, but I'm gonna like just hover. I think you've seen me do that, Trisha, like in like parties
Oh yeah.
before, where it's like we'd go out and I'm just like, you know what I mean? I'll just sit there like,
No, man. Avoidance is my love language. So if I can just nah, not tonight, guys. No.
All right, but I do you have intensely positive reactions to beautiful things such as art or nature? Like intense, it's super intense. You start tearing up or
wait
Yeah.
lang.
That's
I
a
it
start
really
yes.
shaking,
impacts
dude.
you.
I start
That's a
shaking in
yes.
my body. Yeah.
I'm kinikilig. I'm just thinking about this one moment. I'm just like, oh, mm,
Okay, how about do you
yeah,
need a lot of alone or downtime, especially when things are stressful? I feel like this is a yes for most people.
yeah. That's all of
Yes.
us,
This seems
Suze.
like a pretty
Yeah,
much a
Yes.
yes.
yeah, yeah.
How
Downtime,
about this
alone
next
time when
For
things are
one?
stressful.
sure.
Are you extremely sensitive to physical touch?
No,
Like textures really weird you out. Like
nah.
if something's itchy, you're just like you can't deal with it.
Not
I have a
really.
weird thing where I don't allow anything to touch my solar plexus. That's the one thing. That's the one thing.
Oh, just your
Where's
solar
the
plexus.
solar plexus? Where is that? Like here?
It's it's the part where your ribs meet in the middle in your of your chest.
Ay,
It's it's this part. Yes, I don't allow anything near that part of my body. I just don't like it being touched. Other than that, nope.
Other than that, nothing. How about you?
interesting.
Like, do you have any
Parang,
sensitivities?
like to touch, like just
Yeah, like
textures and shit. Parang
touch can be overwhelming.
I've,
Yeah.
but I've never like, di ako but physical touch is my love language, but I don't get ano naman about like, hindi, parang hindi naman ako, parang not really.
I
It's my
agree
love
here with what
language.
Chase says. Textures on food. Maarte daw ako, but the texture of some foods are really wrong. I absolutely agree with you. And number one example is anything that's gelatinous but not sweet. It's weird. It's
Really?
weird. Like it can taste really good. Like it's delicious, the flavor, but if the texture is off, I cannot eat it. I
Like
can't.
those
I was like,
jellyfish,
"Ugh."
like the
Yeah.
Yeah.
jellyfish sa Chinese restaurants, yung jellyfish,
Yeah,
I
ano,
love
ganon.
that.
they're
I love
delicious. I
that.
think they
I also
are
like what
delicious.
Mackie had to say here. I don't like people touching my belly button. It was a weird tentacle porn thing. Don't ask. You can't lead with I don't like people touching my belly button. It was a weird tentacle porn thing, and then finish with don't ask. That's just mean.
I don't know if this is a fair response, a fair demand, Mackie, but life is not fair, I guess. All right, let's go through some more of these questions. Do you notice a lot of things, including small things that no one else notices? Like small changes in body language, in tone. Do you often notice, for example, if two people are secretly dating, but they're not out to the public? Do you notice when a pair of best friends, the girls, are actually lesbian lovers? Do you notice these things?
Again, it's either hyper yes or hyper no. There's no in between. It's I'm either on
Yeah.
or off.
I
It's a
am a
switch.
super no on this. I'm a super no on this.
I'm a
I
yes on this one.
We love to watch people. We're just like, what drama is
Mm,
going on now?
mm.
All
I
right,
can
next.
people watch all day and not get a single one right. I'm like, that couple has been together for 20 years. Then somebody go, they're brother and sister. I would never. I'm so bad at reading people.
You should play that game they have on Instagram where it's like it's like a guy and a girl. They're like
Oh yeah,
brothers or
boyfriend,
sisters,
girlfriend, or brother and
boyfriend or partner
sister.
sister. Yeah,
That's messed
you should
up,
play that
man.
game.
Oh, we should totally play that game. Let's do it for the
In
culture.
Alabama, it's the same game. Anyway,
Stop.
Okay, next. Do you find sex mysterious and powerful? And are you turned on by more subtle sexual cues versus explicit ones?
Subtle.
Subtle sexual cues versus explicit ones.
I
Like,
have never seen a subtle sexual cue in my entire life. That is
Wow.
how
Can you define
dense
it?
I am. What is a subtle sexual cue? I don't know anybody is giving me a sexual cue until they're like,
are you for
you know what I
real,
mean? Like, I
though?
don't know. Unless their like foot is up my thigh, I don't know that I'm being hit on.
I don't know, man. Somebody would go like this to me, and I'd be like, "Oh, oh shit!"
They
I've
just breathe in
fallen.
your direction.
I've fallen already.
All right, and lastly, do you have and or desire extremely close relationships with others?
No.
Like you don't want to bare
We're
your
seeing
soul.
a pattern here, Jobim.
Yeah, I think we can decidedly say that Jobim is not a highly sensitive person.
Yeah.
With some finality, I think.
No, I mean, I do enjoy having extremely close relationships, but I wouldn't say I seek them out, and I certainly don't enjoy having a lot of them. I like that not I only have a few people to confide in. It keeps my life neat.
Mm. It's an interesting way of putting it. Like, what do you mean by neat? Like, it doesn't no drama.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean,
That's
if you
nice
were
to
to
think
keep, okay,
about.
let me put it this way. For me, baggage, issues, like whatever I have in my mind, right? It's your mess. Would you rather store your mess in a lot of different places or have it neatly organized in 3 drawers?
Yes, I see
Right?
your point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So every time I need to unpack it, I just go to the same places. I don't know. For me, it seems simple. Then again, I think we've established today I am not sensitive. Please explain to me how it works for you guys.
Well, you know me, I'm poly and I'm very malande, and I like when I meet somebody,
Really?
sometimes I really news to everyone.
Pesh got jokes. Ooh.
I'm funny
She's
sometimes.
funny. She's funny now that she isn't like here. No man, like
Sorry, go
for
on.
me, for me, I want to have a lot of really close relationships. When I first meet somebody, I pretty much already know that I want a deep connection with them, and I try to pursue often a sexual or romantic relation. Like that's typically my mode. When I meet somebody, if I'm attracted to you, I will ask you out immediately. And I just do this with a lot of people, I think. And I really don't mind. I think because I have a lot of energy, I have a lot of things to say and things I want to do. It's also spreading it out so that one person doesn't get overwhelmed because I don't know if one
Mhm.
person can date me. I don't know if they'll be able to do it, if they'll be able to take all of it. So I spread it out. But
We
I'm
will
also a
continue
highly
on with the
sensitive
discussion
person.
in just a bit. But before we get into the discussion tonight, here's the newsstand. On August 5, Apple announced a new feature being built into the upcoming iOS 15, iPad OS 15, Watch OS 8, and Mac OS Monterey software updates designed to detect if someone has child exploitation images or videos stored on their device. It'll do this by converting images into unique bits of code known as hashes based on what they depict. The hashes are then checked against a database of known child exploitation content that's managed by the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. If a certain number of matches are found, Apple is then alerted and may further investigate. Now, other companies do actively search for such photos and videos. Facebook, Microsoft, Twitter, and Google, and its YouTube subsidiary, all use various technologies to scan their systems for any potentially illegal uploads. What makes Apple's system unique is that it's designed to scan our devices rather than the information stored on the company's server. This, of course, is just the latest in a long line of
Data
increased
collection.
privacy. Yeah, data collection, increased data collection under the banner of, protecting the innocents. But it's an online war that has kind of spilled onto the streets at this point. There was an article, I think, in 2019 from The Observer that came out detailing some of the struggles that privacy and data gathering has experienced.
So what is happening here is it's not just I think data collection, it's mass
Mhm.
surveillance really.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
they're able to spy on you through your phone because of course they're using it to find child trafficking or child sex exploitation images and videos, but that's obviously what they're telling you they're using it for. And then there's also God, conspiracy theory brain, but the American government and governments in general, can we really trust them with our data? They can totally spy on you through this. And there has been a lot of warning for this.
Mhm.
Sex workers in that Observer article were warning against it because I think sex workers are one of the most surveilled and monitored groups of people as a whole. They're constantly being monitored for red flag activities of quote unquote prostitution, which is illegal. So um, there's a lot of surveillance on these people, and they have been warning for years that with the way that things are going, it's going to get here. And now we're here in the name of anti trafficking, which is always
Mhm.
a really great, noble cause. But what are we doing, man? We're
It's basically the
giving.
same thing. If you're old enough to remember, like the Patriot Act way back when, where they were like, "All right, we're going to legalize wiretapping as long as there's probable cause," and we get so up in arms here in the Philippines every time every time we feel that the government is overstepping its bounds. how can you not be a little incensed that big corporations are stepping in to reach into your phone, trying to tell you that it's for a good cause? And while it is right, it's very noble on the face of it. Do you trust them to use that technology for the purposes which they advertise?
Because they could totally use it to spy on regular people.
Mm-hmm.
All
Anyway,
right,
stay vigilant.
that was the newsstand. Now sitting down. Now on to the show.
All right, so let's talk about some of the advantages and struggles of being a highly sensitive person. So, some of the pros I would say is that if you're dating someone who's a highly sensitive person, they're often quite considerate. They take note of the little things that you like. They remember those little details, how you like your eggs or what color you like to wear, things like that. And, means sweet little gestures, nice gifts,
Thoughtful gift givers. Yeah.
just really good attention to detail. So this also means that they tend to anticipate their partner's needs and emotions because they're curious about how their partner feels, and they're extra attuned to behavioral or mood changes, as we've already established. And then HSPs, when they
Mm.
bond with people, they do tend to have much deeper connections, or they demand deeper connections. They want to know your soul, they want to communicate, they want to have long talks. And like they feel things really intensely. So the honeymoon period is extremely intense. Whenever I have somebody I'm flirting with, it takes over my entire life. It's like a new crush, a new person I'm dating. It's gonna be like really intense, and it's basically like I'm gonna be on drugs for like 3 to 6 months.
I see
So
Kai nodding her head. Kai, you have something to say?
I see that. I see that hard.
but because of all these intense emotions, HSPs are also often really creative and bursting with ideas because they're taking in all this information, they're processing it, and they're turning it into something. But it's not all happy, happy, fun times. There are also some drawbacks to being extremely sensitive. So,
Challenges.
yeah, challenges. Jobim, what for you as definitely not a highly sensitive person?
Mhm.
What are some challenges have you had dealing with people who are very sensitive?
Ooh, well, the challenges have been mine, really, in not being able to adapt, right? I what you said earlier, A and B, HSPs are often incredibly thoughtful and considerate. They anticipate the needs of their partners. For a long time, I was very reactionary, right? Uh, if sensitive people anticipate and they plan things out, I wouldn't really do things unless it was, I don't know, necessary, expected, unless it called for. I rarely go out of my way to do something, but I realize that sensitive people enjoy that sort of thing. So now I sort of try. I guess you could call that a challenge. I'm trying to match a sensitive person's idea of how they should be treated versus how uh, I think a person should be treated, or what is considered enough, what is considered enough affection, what is considered enough attention. That's a challenge for me.
Well, that makes sense because Aaron's data actually demonstrates that HSPs tend to be happier with each other because their temperaments are more compatible.
Hmm.
Uh, but it also shows that HSPs' relationships are less happy on average because of, I guess, that expectation of your partner, and then the partner feeling inadequate, and it becomes like this cycle. Which hopefully with this episode we can help break some of that. So some of the other things that suck about being a highly sensitive person, and this is based on experience, is that I'm very quick to stress, irritability, frustration, withdrawal, fight, flight, or freeze is very common in my daily life. Happens way too often. That might also just be the anxiety talking.
Hmm.
But not just that, but it's not just actual, like a reaction to actual events. Sometimes it's a reaction to perceived changes, like, oh, I thought she raised her voice a little, I'm gonna think about that for the next 3 hours. uh and HSPs need more time to recover from these intense emotions. So
Hmm.
something that, like, let's say you make slightly snide remark about me and you forget it because it's no longer on your brain and you're done and everyone else has forgotten it, I will still be thinking about it for a week, like a week later.
Or let's say I'm having a bad day, or I'm feeling bad about something, and we're having a conversation, and I snap at you because I'm having a bad day. I'm not mad at you or anything, but because I had snapped at you, now you've held on to that.
Yeah.
You
And like
know,
Yeah.
even
I
if you try to understand, it's like you still think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I see that a lot with like my partner. Like there are days where I'm just working a lot, right? And I'll talk to you later, bye. And she's like, "Are you mad?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not mad. I'm just really like on work mode." Shit like
Yeah.
that. And I
I'm just
remember like
stressed right
early,
now.
I'm just stressed right now. Or like earlier, you said like that attention to detail. Remember when my partner and I started dating, we pretended not to have remembered meeting each other before, right? And then when we finally figured out that we were both lying, trying to be cool, she was like, "No, I remember exactly what you were wearing when I first met you." And I'm like, "Same, same."
So HSPs, they hold on to things and they tend to overthink the present and the future. You know, they go into a little bit of a doom spiral. Part of this is because sometimes they compare themselves or their relationships with others. They compare it also to a hypothetical outcome. So let's say you and your partner are having a highly sensitive person is having a fight with a non very sensitive or not a highly sensitive person. And let's say it goes downhill. The highly sensitive person is going to like obsess over how it could have gone, and like stress about the fact that it did not go that way. And then
Mhm.
they're going to doom spiral. They can like they start to perceive their partner's flaws a little bit more. They start to look into that like, oh, are we compatible because this bad thing happened? Maybe we're not meant to be in a relationship together. So there's like this trajectory that highly sensitive people think because they're overthinking and
It's
uh
a little similar to bipolar disorder, isn't it? I mean, like
they're
just a little bit. There's some similarities.
But then
actually
again, a lot of mental illnesses have a lot of they cut across each other. There's actually like
Right.
there's already a criticism against that in the sense that like naming or categorizing mental disorders the way we do it now isn't exactly helpful because there's a
It's
lot that cut
incomplete.
across. Yeah. Anyway, we were going back to HSP. Like it's like it does seem similar to like certain mental illnesses, but I wouldn't parang I don't think it's like um there. Guess
Yeah,
ba?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
well, HSP is not considered a mental disorder or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's considered a trait. But as we will find, there's a lot of overlap between HSP and other mental disorders like ADHD, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, anxiety
Oh,
disorder. And that's because there are biological reasons, which we'll cover in part two of this
okay.
topic. But yeah, basically, the major disadvantage really of HSPs is that because you feel things a lot, you expect a lot from your partner. It's really easy for you to get into a funk and really hard for you to get
Right.
out of a funk.
Yeah.
And you know, it creates really unfair expectations on yourself and on the people around you. You know,
Mhm.
to act a certain way. And I think a part of this is because our society makes HSPs feel terrible. You know, we keep telling people you're too much, you're too sensitive, you're too needy, and in some cases you're too desperate, right? We tell them to toughen them up, grow a thick skin. And this is even worse for men. Like I have suffered through this as a female presenting person. It's even worse for men. And because we keep drilling into HSPs that there's something wrong with them, then it becomes really difficult to accept these people for who they are.
Right. And the idea that there's like no control or awareness of the thoughts, the parang when you have the idea that you can't control what's going on in your head or that there's no awareness of like why these thoughts are happening, diba? That's kind of when they start to stack up and you start to spiral.
All right. So that's it for part one of Too Soft for Love. Make sure to stay tuned for part two, where we'll talk about the biology and psychology of emotional sensitivity, as well as give some advice on how to manage your emotions responsibly so that you can have happier and healthier relationships, not just with others, but also with yourself. Producer, take us to the break.
We knew there was no other way. We knew what we had to face, but it still hurt when it happened. I thought my emotions would dampen, but I still don't know where it all went wrong. I must have lost it along the way. The smile you gave me, if I'd known that you would love me only until here, I would have held it dear. Oh, my memory betrays me. The touch of your skin just won't escape me. If I'd known that you'd be gone, I wouldn't have held on. Maybe this would be easier, but
Sakit. That was How Can I Forget, a new release from singer-songwriter Erin Lee. Shortly after the release of her debut EP, Paper Flowers, Lee has never let the style of her vocal harmony and instrumentation keep her within the confines of a single genre. Using her creativity and versatility as a self-taught producer to branch out into the OPM scene even further, she is one of the faces that make up two of her other side projects, the acoustic duo CJ and Aaron, and Lily Stars Records indie folk duo Lily on the River. You can stream their music now on Spotify. And if you are an artist that wants to be featured on the show, we would be honored. Send your clips to nowopenph@gmail.com.
And welcome back to Now Open the Podcast, the sex education podcast that's more sex than education. I'm Trisha.
I am Kai.
I am Jobim.
And I'm Presh.
This week, we are looking into how highly sensitive people experience and go through their relationships with others. In part one, we discussed the characteristics of a highly sensitive person, its good side, and its challenging side. This is part two of Too Soft for Love, where we'll try to understand what makes highly sensitive people tick and discuss some of the ways you can stay in tune with your emotions without letting it take over your relationships or your life. So let's get into some of the science behind HSPs because, you know, when you hear the word HSP, highly sensitive person, I don't know. When I first heard it, I thought it was about people with third eyes, like people who could see ghosts.
Or you can see shapes behind cards. You know, just it's similar to ESP. It's close enough, right?
Like
I have ESPN or something.
Or like the significantly less scientific concept of an empath, right?
Right, right.
But the reason why Erin, who is a psychologist and researcher herself, decided to use the term highly sensitive person is to separate it from those other maybe pseudoscience or other things that don't have any scientific backing. So she's done quite a few studies on this particular trait. So apparently, being highly sensitive is not exclusive to humans. According to Aaron, biologists have found this trait in over 100 species, including cats, dogs, birds, fish, fruit flies, and horses. So mainly the way that they observe this is by cautiousness when approaching new things. And it is believed to be a survival strategy. So it's not just in humans. And I honestly think one of my cats is a highly sensitive cat because he does not like to be touched very much. Extremely jumpy, very sensitive to sounds. I've never had a cat this sensitive. So I think he gets it from me.
Maybe.
And the thing about HSP is that it is possibly genetic. There are associations with serotonin and dopamine genes. So that's why there's some overlap with other mental disorders that also deal with a lack of serotonin and dopamine. Of course, just like anything, it's not all about nature, it's some nurture. Early environments likely also play a role, like were your parents able to model good communication, or did y'all just yell at each other or withdraw and not have good ability to express yourself? So or if your parents neglected you, or if there's some trauma or abuse, then it's very possible that these traits are amplified by those things. So there are three characteristics that HSPs check for. Is the ease of excitation. It's like how easily excitable you are to feel things, bad or good. There's also aesthetic sensitivity. This is how positively you react to beautiful things. And there's also low sensory threshold, which is how you react to negative stimuli or stimuli that's overwhelming. So
Mm-mm.
if you're an HSP, you could like score higher in one of these three categories or equal across the board, but it's a combination of these three traits. So a 2014 study that was conducted by Aaron and Associates showed that HSPs, when shown pictures of sad and happy faces, had stronger than usual activations in the parts of the brain that control empathy and awareness. And even when they were told to relax in between looking at these faces, the brain activity showed that they were still processing the information.
Maybe
They
telling
were
a
like,
sensitive person to relax is not the right move.
yeah, they were just like, they're like, chill out. We're gonna scan your brain and stuff, and they were still
Chill out.
processing
Why?
the
Is something
information.
wrong?
Have
What did
you
I do?
have you ever actually relaxed when someone was like, relax? Like, have you
Chilling
ever?
out,
Have you
chilling out
ever?
now.
Has it ever
Relax,
calmed you
woman.
down?
There's
So,
something wrong in the study. Okay, go.
well, they also took a look at the brain patterns, and they noticed that there was greater connectivity between the parts of the brain that manage memory consolidation and memory retrieval. So, people who are HSPs, they love retrieving and consolidating memories. Again,
Oh.
processing information. But there is a weak connection between the parts of a brain that modulate pain and anxiety, as well as emotion processing and stress regulation. So you're really good at taking in information and processing it and recalling and retrieving information as needed, but you don't know how to manage your feelings around the information that you're processing. So it's
Right.
a great trade-off.
I think, I think, I mean, now that I'm hearing about all this, just from my purely uneducated and non qualified point of view, right? It seems like HSPs have kind of an advantage, right? It seems like an evolutionary response to something, being sensitive to non-verbal traits and other things that are going on around you. It's being sensitive to people for survival, to help you get along with people better, maybe people who don't verbalize things as well. In an age where verbal communication, at a time when when verbal communication was not as complex as it is now, being able to read somebody's mood based on nonverbal cues would have been such a huge evolutionary advantage. It also would have been an advantage in a tribe to get along with people. I just think that HSPs now get a bad rap in today's society because we have so much stimuli, and today's lifestyle, today's relationships are, I'd assume, way more complicated than they were back then, when this evolutionary trait was so important to have. So now they get like, you're super sensitive because the world has changed.
And I
Right?
think you'll
But
see some patterns really with how we treat like mental disorders like ADHD, because the idea behind ADHD is also the same. It was an evolutionary trait. It really helped you when you were hunter gatherers, because the ability to take in a lot of information really helped you escape from predators and stay
Mhm,
alive. And
mhm,
the reason why people with ADHD struggle now is because of the way that we've set up our society. We demand schedules, we demand routine.
we demand to
We
focus
demand
on
that
things
people
for
be
more than 15
productive.
minutes at a time.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we'll see that like while these did have some benefits, and they still do have benefits today, like the way that we treat these people is part of the reason why it's so difficult to be an HSP. And I do want to connect this a little bit to ADHD, because while I was researching this episode, I basically felt a lot of connections to ADHD, which I recently have been medicated for. And it just basically startled me how there were a lot of overlaps. So I wanted to look into it further. And the reason why it's so similar is because people with ADHD also have a nervous system that overreacts to things in the outside world. And there's also this thing with wait, where am I? Okay, so yeah, well, people with ADHD have a nervous system that gets set off really quickly, and this is partially because of trauma responses. People with ADHD are often bullied, made fun of, or otherwise told something is wrong with them, more so than the average person. I think there was a study that showed that the average child with ADHD got 20,000 more hate messages or negative messages than the average person. So there's a lot of trauma response here. So it kind of conditions you to also react even more. According to psychologist and ADHD coach Michelle Novotny, she observed higher emotional and physical reactivity in people with ADHD. She suggests that because people with ADHD are easily overwhelmed, it leads to hypersensitive reactions and difficulty coping emotionally. So it sounds familiar, right? It sounds a lot like being an HSP. And there's this one common symptom of ADHD that's called rejection sensitive dysphoria. And when I came upon this term, a lot of things were illuminated for me.
Was it a light bulb moment?
It was just like, huh, interesting.
It's like a
Because the word-
horoscope, but in science.
Yeah, you're like, I relate to this. So the word dysphoria basically means hard to bear, right? Gender dysphoria, it's hard to bear your gender. So with rejection sensitive dysphoria, it's hard to bear rejection. People with ADHD are actually much more likely to get upset even if they think someone is criticizing them. So this really results in a people pleaser type attitude where you avoid conflict and social situations that would make you feel vulnerable. So a lot of overlap there. Although
But then
I
you
must
tend to
point,
hold it in because you avoided the confrontation. Then you just hang on to
yes,
it and you die slowly. Because you're
yeah,
like, damn, I should have said that thing 5 days ago.
You like replay the conversation in your head.
You're
And you're like,
mumbling in the
"Damn it!"
shower.
Like you're about to sleep and you're like, damn. I should've said that.
I should have said that.
Yeah. Matulog ka na.
So there's a lot of overlap, but I do want to point out that there are major differences between people with ADHD and HSP. Aaron herself thinks that it's mutually exclusive. More not naman mutually exclusive, but more often than not, they do not co-occur. But she has met people. She acknowledges that she's met people who say that they are both HSP and have ADHD. So she's like, further study is needed. But yeah,
Question. How could you tell if it's rejection sensitivity dysphoria and if it's just like I feel bad about the rejection?
That's a good question.
well, it's just more of an extreme reaction because as Guru Maki likes to say, everyone experiences the same emotions that people
Mm-mm.
with mental health issues experience. We all get sad and depressed and anxious and all these things. It's just the degree to which it affects you in your life. So if you're sad about rejection, it's a very normal human reaction. But if you can't let go of it and it affects your life and it makes you feel bad about yourself and it makes you want to avoid doing that again because you don't want to get hurt anymore, it makes you. Basta, if you go into a doom spiral because somebody rejected you, maybe it's that.
It's an unhealthy reaction. Like
Yeah.
a markedly unhealthy reaction to rejection, siguro.
Yes.
Yes. So,
Okay.
Kai, why don't you take us into our segment?
All right. So for today's opening up, we have an anonymous letter. They write, "Dear Now Open, my crush just admitted that they had feelings for me. But when he did, my feelings went away. Am I weird, given that I used to be obsessed with him?"
Has this ever happened to y'all? I've never experienced this.
Okay, yeah. I know that we don't like Woody Allen on this podcast, but one of my favorite quotes comes from Woody Allen, and I think it encapsulates this perfectly. It goes, it's sometimes also attributed to Groucho Marx, so I'm not sure who said it. I would never want to be a part of a club who would have me as a member.
Yeah, okay. You know
Yeah.
what? He was correct.
There you go.
Sorry,
It's a self-deprecating joke. Sorry?
Do you really relate to this where it's like if somebody likes me, they must not be jack shit?
No, well, yeah. So my favorite line is the most attractive quality that a person can have is that they find me attractive, right? But the honest to God truth is that, yeah, sometimes when I find out that a person likes me, I'm like, there's maybe something wrong with you now. I think it might have something to do with how you see yourself. If this person who is messaging us feels less attraction to somebody when they find out that they're attracted to them, it might be because of the way they view themselves.
All right.
It's a judgment call based on what they're attracted to, right? It's a judgment call on yourself.
That
So,
is
anonymous
true.
letter writer, you might want to take a closer look inward before finding more crushes. And
I
hopefully
mean,
next
Maybe they just
time,
like the chase.
maybe. Oh, that
that's
too,
possible.
actually.
Still look
That's also
inward.
super viable.
Still
Still
look
look inward.
inward to figure
Yeah,
that
still look
out.
inward though. Yeah, if that's the case, Presh has a really good point. There are also a lot of people who are just into the chase,
Mm-mm.
and I would have to get more context into what your relationship with your crush was like. If it was just a happy crush from far away, and you found out that they liked you back, then yeah, it is about the chase. But if it was a thing that
Mm-mm.
had been going on for a while, na MU kayo since high school, and oh my god, the pandemic, things happened, and then all of a sudden they like you, and then you're like, no more. Then yeah, there's either way, look inside, look inward.
I agree with that. Like, I think that why, but if you're really like over, like all over one person, right? And they like you back. I mean, typically, at least personally, if someone did that to me, I'd be like, tang ina, bro, let's go, let's have babies. Come on, tara, bro. Um, but yeah, I agree with Joe Bim in the idea na like, what if this is a projection? Na parang I feel na parang I like you and you like me back. Why would you like me back? Like, parang that's kind of like the back and forth I'm seeing in this interaction. Na parang like, why? Parang it's a projection of what I feel within regarding myself, projecting onto like my perception of this person and the relationship that we have. So look within. I also agree with that.
Yeah. And I just want to assure you, you're not weird. Whatever feelings you have or don't have, they don't make you weird. It's totally fine to not feel anything. So just explore it. It could also be like maybe now you're tired, you don't have a crush on them, and then it comes back later. Who knows? Life goes on. Look inward. That's the summary of all the advice you can
That's
get.
a summary. Look inward. That wasn't anti-advice from Joe Bim tonight. I love it. I'm like,
Yeah, for
ooh,
once. It was
I
actually
know,
good
right?
advice.
It's like,
Look
it's great
inward.
advice.
Wow.
Coming from Joe Bim.
I guess everyone
Poor
can
Kitty's not here.
change.
Miss you,
Maybe he
Joe
looked inward.
Bim. Joe Bim had to go on a journey inward, so he's gone for the night.
So, if you'd like to send us your anonymous questions or confessions, you can submit through our opening up form. It's in the episode description, and I am adding it to the comments. So, let's go back to the discussion. So, we talked a lot about what makes an HSP, why it sometimes sucks, why it's sometimes awesome, and what's really going on in the brain of a really emotionally sensitive person. Now, let's talk about actionable insights. Basically, how to handle your emotions responsibly. If this is something you resonate with, if you are a highly sensitive person, or if your partner is a highly sensitive person and you want to learn how to navigate conflict and communicate with your partners effectively, this is the part for you. Kai, do you have any advice for highly sensitive people?
Trust yourself. I really feel that, like, at the end, like, I feel as though highly sensitive people are very prone to gaslighting. Like, I think that's especially when people are telling you constantly na parang, you're too sensitive, this is what I meant. Gets mo ba? Na parang, like, if someone says something to you and then you're like crying because it hurts so much, and then they'll tell you, you're so sensitive. I didn't even mean to, that's not even what I meant. Diba? That's a gaslighting moment, by the way, guys. You have to figure that out. But yeah, I think that's all really important. You trust your reality, you trust yourself. Now, no, I felt bad about this, and the fact that I feel this is valid enough. The fact that I feel this is good enough, diba?
I think one of the biggest reasons HSPs don't trust themselves and are more prone to gaslighting about their feelings is because they do view their sensitivity as a weakness. They think that it
Mm-mm.
is a flaw that needs to be corrected. And it's just reinforced by the people around them telling them that they need to change. But like one of my biggest pieces of advice to anyone who thinks they're sensitive, rejecting your sensitivity and trying to toughen up and be who you are not is not going to work out for you. You have to embrace your sensitivity as a strength, not a weakness. Um, Erin herself, one of the reasons why she launched into a study of highly sensitive persons is because she identifies as one. And she says, I am deeply moved by things. I'd hate to miss the intense joy of that. And I relate to this. I do feel things, both negative and positive, very intensely. So that can mean some very down moments, but it also means some moment of joy. And if you don't embrace your sensitivity, then you're going to numb yourself to all of the vast experiences of life. And one of those experiences is having feelings.
Right.
Like not having
Right.
feelings doesn't make you strong.
And
Right.
there was just one point in my life where I tried to toughen up in a sense, and not even in the healthy way to toughen up. And I found myself not writing any songs, and music is my life. And when I started viewing my sensitivity as something that's negative, I couldn't write, I couldn't make music, I couldn't make anything I liked or make anything that I thought was beautiful. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, that's not it. This ain't it, fresh. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're
Right.
disconnected from your feelings, you're disconnected from yourself because, like as Kai said, trust yourself. When you listen to your feelings, there's something that your feelings will tell you. And
Mm-mm.
sometimes you might not hear it right away, or you might hear a different thing. Maybe your feelings are tell you, I want to break up with this person. But if you really listen, it'll be more like, I'm hurting because I'm not getting what I need.
Yeah.
Your feelings are there for a reason, and you may just be drawing some of the wrong or extreme conclusions, and it's just really about
Mm-mm.
sitting with those
Yeah.
feelings and getting
Yeah.
to what it
And
means.
that's why it's so important to clarify. For example, like if whenever I feel that I'm criticized, like it works wonders. Like you'd be surprised to go to the person and say, is this what you meant by this? Did you mean to
Yeah.
say this? And like it really works wonders. Like how many disasters could be averted by just asking a simple question, right? Because it's very
Definitely.
disarming, and you're coming in and you're seeing level to level. And if they say, yes, I was criticizing you, then maybe there's a way to talk about that, and say like, oh, I didn't like that. It opens a conversation rather than just you seeing something, sitting in your feelings and feeling bad about it. Oh, they hate me, they criticize me, and stuff like that.
I totally agree with that. Like one of the greatest things told to me like in the past year was clarity is kindness. And that's really something that has done wonders. Like that phrase has done wonders. Shout out to Maki because she told me that.
Guru
Parang
Mackie. Actually,
Guru Maki, bro.
like I listed like
So
10 sources in the sources for this episode, but actually it's just Mackie.
mm-hmm. And when Maki told me that na clarity is kindness, na it was really something that pushed me to talk. Like to really like talk. That's how my girlfriend and I started to like do the check-ins. And I agree with Presh and I agree with Trisha na like when you embrace your sensitivity, na when you accept it, na you say na parang, okay, if someone says, you're so sensitive, and you be like, yeah, I am, and you accept that,
Yeah.
it does, parang, kasi it hurts when you resist it. It hurts when you say na parang, you're too sensitive, and you think na parang, okay, I'm too sensitive, there's something wrong with that. Versus, yes, I'm sensitive, and that's okay. That
Yeah.
that perspective shift does wonders.
I think we really need to get rid of that black and white thinking. And this really also helps people, HSPs, because you often get stuck in black and white thinking. It's a all or nothing, either or. It's either my partner does this or I break up with them. It's very extreme black and white thinking. So one thing you can do is maybe take note when you're starting to catastrophize in that way, where your options, like you have two options. There's always more than two options. So when you find yourself doing that, then maybe take a pause, take a step back, and see where you're coming from rather than doing your two options. I think also one thing I can recommend, and this is just true of most things, whenever you feel like you are lacking in something, you give more of it. So if you feel like your partner is extremely insensitive, or not even extremely, I hope that you're not dating somebody who's extremely insensitive, but everyone has their insensitive moments, and that's just life. But one way that you can do it, is that if you feel like your partner's being insensitive to you at this moment, you try to be even more sensitive and try to be even more empathic and more understanding. So Mackie says that sensitivity allows us to see hear ourselves deeply, and in turn see and hear others deeply beyond their trauma and conditioning. Things become less personal when you understand and empathize with someone else's experience. So you basically use your sensitivity to try and understand the other person, which is what you're trying to do, right? When you're reading their body language and you're reading into their tone, you're trying to understand them. But this time, instead of trying to understand them by reading body language, which can you can draw the wrong conclusions from it, you ask questions, you inquire like why do you feel this way, how is it affecting you, um and then from there you'll be able to have hopefully a de-escalated conversation, because I think what happens is that HSPs, they get trapped in a cycle of I'm so sensitive, my partner's insensitive, and it just explodes because it just keeps a feedback loop. But HSPs, you also have control, you have power. If you stop the feedback loop by,
Mm-hmm.
taking a step back and understanding the other person, then you can stop a fight before it escalates.
And in
Right.
understanding someone, like the way to do that really is to listen mindfully and sensitively in the conversation. Because you know how like usually when you're talking to someone, you're already thinking of a response. Like may sinasabi na tong tao, parang blah, 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 blah. And you're already thinking, ito yung sabihin ko pagka sinabi niya to. How often has it been that what you planned to say actually was said? Because parang, you know how the only way we can resolve a conversation, because you know how like what Jobim was talking about earlier, you look back at these conversations you had in the past, I wish I said this, I wish I said that. And that's because it usually happens because you're always thinking of what to respond next, but you're not just listening and thinking like, okay, I will listen to exactly what you say and I will respond when you are done talking and I have heard everything you said. Diba? So when you actually are in the moment and you're just in that present moment, listening and responding accordingly to the present moment, nothing's unresolved because you're not in the future. You're not thinking of what to say. You're not thinking of what you had to say. You're thinking of what to say right now. And to be mindful in the present is something that really does help with highly sensitive people, in the sense na a lot, like what Trisha said earlier, highly sensitive people are often anxious about what's happening, what could happen in the future, diba? Fear of what happened in the past. But what if you stayed in the present and listened, diba?
Absolutely. I think another part of staying in the present is because when you often go into these tough discussions, you come with a wall and a layer of armor because you are prepared for battle, right? You have your guard up and you're more defensive. But if you stay in the present and you take it moment by moment, you kind of learn to let your guard down and maybe even learn from the criticism in part,
Mm-hmm.
because your partner, if they're the ones bringing up the conflict, and most conflicts are not one-sided, most conflicts there's like a role that both parties played in a certain issue. So there's always something to be learned from listening to your partner and
Mm-hmm.
listening from the criticism. And you can even agree, like what Kai said, if your partner calls you sensitive, you go, yes, I am sensitive, I agree with that. Or you can even agree with the principle of like, yes, I agree that crying loudly and interrupting you while you talk is not fair. But you can agree with the principle of what they're saying
Mm-hmm.
without
Mm-hmm.
taking it
Right.
personally
Like
and
the way that
internalizing
I
it.
sorry, the way that I like to see it is that whenever I receive criticism, like my first reaction is to be defensive about it, to be sensitive about it. Even if the criticism is valid, then I have to go back and think, what part of me am I trying to defend? What part of my inner child is being threatened right now? And how do I come to terms with that? And say, like, okay, I'm valid. What I feel is valid and it hurts. But why are there walls? What am I trying to defend right now? And it's about self it's it's a very personal thing where you have to regulate it by yourself, and nobody's ever going to do that for you, because only
Mm-hmm.
you know yourself the most in those very inner deep parts of you, and investigating yourself like that, I feel, has helped me take in criticisms more productively, I would say.
Absolutely. Mackie also says clarity isn't possible with others until we can embrace our sensitivity and understand ourselves so that we can clearly communicate our feelings and share ourselves with others. And what Bresh and Mackie bring up here is really important. If you are a very sensitive person, one of the first things that you need to do is get to know yourself. Be secure in yourself, because the more that you know yourself, the deeper the connection that you have to your sense of identity, the less that other people's judgments of you will impact you, because you're sure of who you are. So if they call you sensitive, you're like, yeah, I'm sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me something I don't know. It becomes water off the duck's back. And on top of this, highly recommend meditating. Maki, your impact talaga. Because when you meditate, you learn how to be okay with passing thoughts and events. So you learn to let go of things that happen. You learn to stay in the present. You learn to just deal with feelings, emotions, and events as they come without going too far into the future or too far into the past. So meditation, self-awareness is the path to happiness, I guess. We became a meditation podcast na pala. We're a wellness and meditation podcast now. So let's give some advice for those dealing or who have HSPs in their lives. Kai, what would you like non HSPs to know about HSPs?
Everyone has their capacity, like the same way that, like, for example, Jobim, the Bible was saying he's a very dense person. That's all he can give, right? The same way, with highly sensitive people, what they give is their capacity. Like, um, what all I can really say is there should be, if you're dealing with someone, a loved one who is a highly sensitive person, always find a way to meet in the middle. And when I say middle, and I've said this so many times now, meeting in the middle doesn't mean 50-50. Meeting in the middle sometimes means 60-40, sometimes means 70-30, right? And whatever that middle is up to you guys. Now, like, if your highly sensitive partner says, i need um I need clarity when we fight, versus you need, like, a less sensitive person would be like, I need to have space away from you because I can't be around you. That could drive a highly sensitive person fucking insane, right?
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
for diba? So always find a way to meet in the middle, in the sense that, okay, fine, get your space, but give me a time for when you'll come back, so I know na, okay, you're gonna be gone for 2 hours. At least I know that in 2 hours I can talk to you again. We can hash things out. So it's always finding a common ground. And as I said, common ground might not always be 50-50, right? Sometimes common ground might be wherever you want to meet, as long as everyone's happy.
Yeah, I think it's really important that when you're dealing with a loved one is to remember that you love them. And if you love them, you know, like why would you go out of your way to say things that you know would hurt them? So, my big advice to non HSPs is if you can, just if you can change your language a little, don't use sentences or try to avoid sentences that demonize sensitivity, like you're too sensitive. Don't tell people to stop thinking about what others think, because what you're doing here is you're trying to dictate how other people act instead of trying to understand why they act that way. So don't operate from a place of control. Operate instead of a place from a place of love and understanding. Part of this is being mindful of how your words, actions may come across, including your body language, tone, and other nonverbal cues. Because if you are yelling or if your voice is raised and the HSP person is pointing it out, and you try to deny that because you're not mindful of how loud your voice has gotten, then that would lead to that could escalate the fight, or that could lead to like really broken communication. So being mindful on both parties' sides is really, really helpful.
Right. I feel like I think what I would tell somebody dealing with an HSP is that, there's a lot to be learned from people who are not like you, in the same way that they can learn a lot from you as well. Maybe they can learn that, dealing with situations a little bit more calmly and a little bit more level headed is a good thing, but looking at the world and being sensitive to the people around you, and anticipating needs and looking at non verbal cues is also very helpful for our survival. I just feel like there's something to be learned by every kind of person in the world. That's it.
Also, more than that, like I feel as though something that non-HSP and HSP people have to learn alike is you come into a conversation. When you come into a conversation, don't expect an outcome. Like, because expectations, when you put an expectation on someone, you're trying to control someone, 'di ba? Na parang but when you, for example, I'm talking to my partner and I'm like, okay, you fucked up here, and I'm not saying I expect it from her, but when I say you fucked up here and you did this, you did that, it immediately puts like this idea that I expect you to, but there's an expectation for her to resolve the issue, right? Instead of putting an expectation on someone, I suggest na you say what you feel and leave it at that. Like, say na instead of saying na parang you fucked up, you can say I feel that this was not as this didn't go as planned, and I feel that this could have gone better. So when you focus on what you feel versus what you think you should say to someone, like, tangina mo, tama mo, shit like that, it gives space for them to choose what they should do moving forward. And that's what love is. Love is letting someone be free, diba? As what that old adage goes, na like, you don't try to control someone. You have to let them choose what they want to do with the feelings that you have. Ayun.
Yes, absolutely. Communication is really important. How you communicate, what you communicate, and how often you communicate. Because as an HSP, if you're not communicating, especially if you're stressed, and the thing is, we notice when you're stressed or mad. And if you're not communicating with us, we're going to try and read your mind. So, if you want to avoid those things, communicate. Don't be scared of expressing your feelings. Sensitive people love hearing about other people's feelings. Please tell us more about how you feel. It's sexy, it's a turn on. We enjoy it. So don't be scared of your own feelings. Be honest with yourself as well, and allow yourself to be sensitive some days. Allow yourself to have intense emotions. It's not a weakness, and embrace that. All right. So that wraps up our discussions on Too Soft for Love. What is y'all's number one takeaway?
People are different, and we have to learn how to coexist with each other. I think, and just because somebody is different from you does not mean there's something wrong with them. Maybe they were just brought up in a very different way and stuff like that. But like as humans, we're very social beings, and I feel like that connection between us is something that we should nurture. And just shoving a group of people, like a whole kind of people, and say you're wrong and you're not good because you feel too much, that's a whole bunch of people that you're saying are wrong, and there are a lot of us, by the way. So yeah.
We are
That's
legion.
it. So, yeah, we are a legion. Yun lang.
For me, I think my biggest takeaway is that at the end of the day, like, you know how they say, I feel that term, that adage always like just gets thrown around so quickly and so fast and so often. That's that thing that they say na parang communication is key. Diba? Communication is key. Communication is key. But why are we always so caught up in like miscommunication or shit that we can't say? Diba? Na parang there's always something left unsaid. There's always something that we want to say more of or less of. Sana we didn't say this. Sana we said that. And I think really my biggest takeaway from this conversation is that highly sensitive people have a lot to teach us, in the sense na when you feel a lot and you add that on with communicating openly and honestly in such a way that you that is welcomed by other people. Parang when you have a safe space to be able to talk about what you feel, don't you think that relationships around us would kind of just blossom into something so much better? So it's not really a takeaway, it's more of like a trajectory I hope I could see. Like something we can learn from highly sensitive people is that, yeah, we have a lot of feelings. And something that we can all do is communicate that. Like your lack or your excess of feelings. And again, meet in the middle, some way, somehow.
Yeah. My takeaway from this is that I have a lot of feelings. And I
We
used to think
already
it was
knew
a
that.
bad thing. Yeah, we already knew that. But I used to think it was a bad thing, maybe up until really recently, my late 20s. I thought it was a bad thing because, I would feel negative things very intensely, and my partners would suffer because I'm feeling things very intensely, and it was not a good time all around. But I think if you learn how to accept yourself and listen to yourself and know how to stand your ground, if you know yourself really well, then being a sensitive person isn't going to be a, a bad thing. It's going to help you in life because you're going to have the emotional resilience that everyone is expecting you to have and demanding from you in this society, but you're also going to have the understanding and empathy that like so many people don't have. So embrace it and you'll be Superman. That's my takeaway. So, y'all want to promote anything before we wrap up the show?
Hmm.
Empathy and compassion is what I want to
Yeah.
promote.
I second that.
Thank you.
I gotta stop promoting my Twitter then, because y'all make me seem terrible. Because y'all are like,
No,
"Please
you're not.
love."
Go ahead.
Nako ba? Nako ba?
I
I just don't
promote
think my tweets are
communism.
interesting, so why do I promote that?
Your music, promote your music.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Listen to my
Y'all are
music.
creators. Anyway,
I
you
don't know if
can.
you're ready. Go ahead.
All right, y'all. Stay updated with Now Open by following us on Facebook and Twitter. That's at Now Open PH. Our past episodes are also available on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to join our Discord server to hang out with the hosts, fans, and friends of Now Open. And subscribe to our coffee page. That's coffee.com/NowOpenPH to get bonus content and other special perks. We've changed the membership tiers, so now you can support us for as little as 50 pesos per month. We would really, really appreciate it. It would go a long way. And if you subscribe at higher tiers, namely the VIP tier, you will get 50% discount on all of our merch, on top of the bonus content, behind the scenes, and other special perks of being a VIP member. So this 50% discount is going to come in handy because we are releasing a t-shirt and a sticker pack. So this is
Woo!
in celebration of 1 year of this show. Yay, happy birthday. Woo. We are releasing a shirt in collaboration with National Book Award winner Rob CHAM. You can reserve yours now at bit.ly/nowopen-shirt. I will add the link in the comments, and you can also find the link in the description. The sticker pack is going to be released very soon, so stay tuned to our social media for more information on how you can buy these things. And sign up to our coffee so that you get free, well, not free, half off. Everything half off.
That's a good deal.
It's a
That's an
great deal.
Good
amazing
ass
deal.
deal.
You make your money
Great
back,
deal.
I think, with 1 month's worth of subscribing. All right, I'm really excited to announce next episode, but for I feel bad because now I don't want to take a 2 week break. This was just a good episode, but just to announce to everyone, we will be taking a 2 week break. So next Tuesday and the Tuesday after that, we will not be broadcasting, but we will be back on August 31, and we will be back with Does Size Really Matter?
Size of our hearts do.
The size of my bank account does in this capitalist society. But so we'll look more into whether or not size is really a thing and I don't know. We'll see. Jobim is leading on this episode, and I'm super, super excited.
It's a very Jobim episode. I'm
Right? Like, just
excited. It's
when I
something
saw it, okay,
Jobim was.
Jobim would
This is
do.
so
Stars asking,
Jobim.
bakit wala daw 2 weeks?
We will be gone for 2 weeks because our network is taking a break. And I also realized that in the 48 episodes that we've done for this show, I have
Trisha
been
has
there
never
for
taken a
every
break.
single one of them. And I also need a break. But yeah, we'll see y'all on August 31 for Does Size Really Matter? But please catch up on past episodes on our Spotify and our YouTube. And if you're bored of that, subscribe to our Coffee because there's so much more stuff there. It'll tide you over until we get back on August 31. See y'all when we next open.
See ya! Oh shit.